Hello and hey, today we're messing around with Golf Around, this time a review of this charming little mini golf game. Releasing in December of 2020 after just shy of a year in early access on Steam, this one-man project has managed to join the ranks of the platform's better mini golf titles. Golf Around is, of course, not without its flaws, but it has managed to navigate some of the pitfalls that other teams have stumbled upon much more smoothly. It features all the options and extracurriculars you'd hope to expect from a mini golf game in the current market and has been updated fairly regularly since its late 2020 release, all at a very competitive price. So let's dive a little deeper into some more specific points. I'll break this down into categories of features, gameplay, art, and design. Starting with perhaps the strongest of those four, features. From the main menu, we have a solo mode, which should be a given, but is important to note in this age of server-dependent online-only games. An online multiplayer mode supporting lobbies of up to 12 players. There are 5 separate regions and surprising 10 supported languages. There's an editor mode where players can create and upload their custom maps to the Steam Workshop, allowing golfers to add many more maps of varying quality to the 10 official courses seen here. We'll go more into detail of the maps in a later section. Cracking into the gameplay settings, there are a bevy of choices. Starting at the top, you can change the control scheme as a whole, with a kinetic swing mode that feels a lot better than it has any right to. Also, officially supporting a first one to the hole race mode is a great idea, as it is a popular way to play for groups of friends, allowing for easy tracking of who has actually emerged victorious. The rest of the features are what we've come to expect, setting the parameters, jumping, resets, collision, different shapes, different spawns, free camera, and an interesting UI toggling mode in Extreme, which I don't see getting much use for 99.9% of people, but still cool that it's here. On top of that, there are ball customization options, colors, different hats that drop from playing, same with different trails, and lastly, some simple software options, but everything you want to see. I'll make a special note of the mouse options. I love to see this much individual axis control, even though default feels great. I've had trouble with other golf games in the past where default did not feel great, felt sloppy, and I couldn't change what I needed, resulting in a worse time. This game punches well above its weight for features, matching its higher profile, higher priced contemporaries at every turn. There's really nothing else I could ask for it from the features. An easy 10 out of 10 for me. Moving from strength to strength, the gameplay is also quite strong. It can be hard to decouple gameplay from design in these types of games, but I'll do my best to discuss each one individually. The charge style of finally selecting your power indicated by a percentage value may seem a touch too granular on the surface, but allows for as much depth as the player wishes to push towards. This is beautifully balanced by the overwhelming majority of holes not punishing the player wanting to rip off a full power shot every hole without being reset or ending up in a worse position than they would otherwise be. This is shown off almost in no better way than the swing mode, where despite lacking some precision, even I was able to break par on my first try on the first course village. Because it will be a rarity to play, the only thing I'll say about swing mode is that it is also wonderfully balanced to make an extremely soft or an extremely hard shot almost impossible to accidentally perform. So while some of those harder courses won't be that fun to try to navigate, it does feel good on those that you can. If I were trying to find flaws in the gameplay, the ball does feel a touch slidey, but only barely. It's something about it doesn't feel quite right, and it's a bit hard to put your finger on. However, where this would be the most problematic is actually perfectly executed. The ball comes to rest exactly when it should. It stops fairly abruptly, but not in a jarring way, in a way that respects your time and allows you to shoot very quickly after it becomes clear where your ball will stop. I really appreciate that aspect, and if it felt even a little slidey, I'd feel much worse about playing this game. Another thing to mention is while this game does have polished edges, like all mini golf games, you will occasionally hit a shot that does not react as you thought, or it should. Sometimes it will laugh in the face of physics and bounce the opposite direction or lose speed a bit faster than expected. I have not played a mini golf game that has completely solved these issues, and it is far from a common occurrence in Golf Around. Just thought it was worth mentioning, as I would give the gameplay a strong 8 out of 10. It's very good, but that little bit of something that feels just off is just enough to keep it from a perfect score. The art is where I will spend the least amount of time, but does deserve its own section. It's pretty simple, art is subjective. However, I would have a hard time seeing anyone raving about the graphics or music in this title. The game has a lot of assets, but the developer has stated they wish to move away from that. This has included the change to an original score from self-described stand-in music. The graphics are simple, but each level is distinct. The direction is perfectly fine, nothing really standing out against its surroundings in a bad way. And as someone who has a function over form preference, I can really appreciate that. They look good. The music is a bit more hit or miss for me. I've been playing it throughout this review. Most of the tracks are inoffensive, and they are obvious improvements over playing in silence. For notes, I don't particularly care for Snowy's theme. The horns don't quite do it for me. Something about them feels almost dissonant, but I do like the idea of going a bit more jazzy over a Snowy level. I like Lab's theme a lot. I think it's one of the best in the game. There's a specific section of Castle 2's music that I really like as well, And that sets the tone. There are some sections that are just outperforming others, but like I said, they're mostly inoffensive and aren't too repetitive. Others do add a bit more to the atmosphere, so it's a pretty confident 6 out of 10 rating for me, even in a subjective category. And that brings us to design, which again will have wild subjectivity. I have a lot of thoughts about what mini golf game courses should or should not have. I say this to let you know that I am a harsher judge than your average player, so if you like these things, don't fret. This is just me acknowledging my definite biases. I will start by saying the design is a good match with the gameplay. The maximum power of your shots fit with the overwhelming majority of holes. That's incredibly important. Not all holes have to be hole-in-one-able, but shots just away shots are exceedingly dull in an arcade mini golf game. So how fun you can kind of make the holes with that very real restriction is another obstacle, which I would say has been cleared proficiently. One person having to create 180 concepts that are meaningfully different is incredibly hard. So I do not downgrade too harshly for very literally repeated concepts. However, there are a small number of clunkers in this game. Like I said at the beginning, I do think Chris was able to swerve the pitfalls pretty well in this regard. There are a high number of fun holes and some interesting concepts at play. But there's an insane enough number of other games and other games workshops that have created enough holes that there aren't any revolutionary designs left, but that goes for anybody trying to create fun holes in the current market. Overall, most holes in Golf Around are good. I don't want that to get lost in any criticisms I levy. Briefly touching on some highlights of the 10 courses, Village is your standard green, real-life style mini golf course. Some super easy holes, some fairly tricky holes, but remains fair throughout. And that's a theme that this game holds up really well. Lab, as I said with the music, might be my favorite in the game. I like that music, the aesthetic. Has some gimmicks, but they don't overstay their welcome, nor do they frustrate the player. It carries a bit more challenge, but allows the player the room to take that on. Vaporwave is an interesting course. I like that it states that it is challenging in the description. That's important to set expectations, but I do think the pars are too low on a few holes, as some of the holes are longer or more tedious, yet the course lacks a single par 5. And before kind of listing every single course, I'll go ahead and jump all the way to the newest course, Cyberpunk. Not that the other 6 I don't mention aren't worth playing, I don't want to imply that at all. I just don't think it's useful for me to kind of list off every single course. There aren't any bad courses in the bunch. Cyberpunk, however, if you're not heading in with the mindset of it being a puzzle course, you're probably going to have a bad time. I like the idea behind that. It stretches what is normally done with mini golf courses. Kind of harkens back to that old computer game that set up holes as puzzles to be solved and less like the fast and loose, let it rip golf games of today. The pars are higher to compensate, and I think that's a wise decision. It requires precision and not trying to do too much at once. Lower pars would make you feel like you're being punished for not being perfect, and that's avoided here. It's doing something different than its contemporaries, and I will absolutely applaud that. Overall, course designs are massively positive. As stated, there are a few holes that stick in my craw, but it's likely most people won't be as offended by their existence as I am. I really like that the hole 18s are spectacles in most of these courses. That's the spirit of mini golf in my opinion. And my hole design concerns are completely thrown out the window in that sense. If you want to have a dragon or do a double front flip on a motorcycle before I even get to shoot my shot, I'm in, and this developer clearly is as well. For design, I'll give a strong 7, again reminding that I'm a harsh judge on this, so take that for what you will. And to conclude, this is a very solid game. At its price point, I do not think it has a peer. Against the rest of the market, it punches above its weight. The biggest negative about this game, no one is playing it. It's a multiplayer game with an extremely low player base, so even for the 5 USD it sits at in the Steam store, it's not the easiest to recommend. It's the type of game that, although really well done, you're likely to only play it a few times with your friends, so if that's worth to you, go for it. For everybody else, the sale price bounces around a little bit. For 3 USD, it easily slots into buy copies for you and your group, have a fun time, and for its all-time low of around 1 USD, it's an absolute steal. If you like mini golf games, there's no excuse for you not to pick this up at a lowered price, and you'd be hard-pressed to try to match value anywhere around a full price. So my final rating for Golf Around is a solid 8 out of 10. We'll have to look to see if the game continues to be updated, and if so, that's most likely only going to improve my thoughts of the game. But I've taken enough of your time, so as always, thanks for watching, thanks for listening. Be safe, guys.